Hey yo, football fans, it's another great year. Fantasy football fiends, grab your beer. Giving you the best draft tips for your picks. Starts and sits to the waiver wire fix. From my drafts galore to stats that's hardcore. Triple F does it all, have y'all screaming more. So sit back, relax, let the experts prevail. JT Magnum, Siggy Guns never fail. What's up, fantasy football fans? My name is JT Magnum here along with Siggy Guns, and welcome to week 8 of our Stardom Sit-'em show. We did a little late this week. We're actually recording it later than usual. The World Series was on last night. I'm sick as a dog, and Siggy has kids. So we're doing it a little late this week. So I do apologize. Usually we do it on Tuesdays, but it is what it is. But let's get rolling. The injury report. We have Arian Foster, Carlos Hyde, who has a banged up foot, who might go. Arian Foster's done for the year, torn Achilles. Dion Lewis, we're not sure about him. We're monitoring his situation. I know he hasn't practiced so far from what I've heard. Joseph Randle hasn't practiced either. He's another guy it looks like he's probably going to be out against Seattle. Vincent Jackson's out 2 to 3 weeks, I believe. I don't know what his injury was. I know that he's out 2 or 3 weeks, but I forgot what his injury was. And Antonio Gates was out last week. Not sure if he's going to play this week. We're going to monitor that situation. He has a sprained, like a grade 1, I think it was, sprained MCL or something like that. So monitor those
PCL,
guys.
Or whatever it was.
I'm not sure who else is injured. Siggy, you know of anybody else of any significant names?
Significant names, not really. I know Des Bryant is practicing. He's supposed to come back, so that's I guess, a positive injury report there.
Yeah.
But
so let's get
I think they did say that Dion Lewis did practice on Tuesday, though.
Well, then hopefully he'll be able to play against the Dolphins. But let's get into Rewind, and let's go over the good starts from last week. My good start from last week was Phillip Rivers with 25.44 points. Siggy's good start was, I forgot the name of the quarterback, who you had as the start for that last week. Let me look.
Ryan Tannehill?
Ryan Tannehill, 27.58 points he scored. Sorry, I forgot to write that part down. The bad start of the week for me was Willie Snead with 2.5 points. And Siggy's bad start was Doug Baldwin with 1.90 points. So for the sits, the good start of the week for Siggy and I, actually, or the good sit of the week, was LeGarrette Blount with negative 0.30 points. And my bad sit of the week was, of all people, Lamar Miller. It seems like when I have a bad sit, it is really bad. 35.60 points for that sit. And Siggy's bad sit was Phillip Rivers with 25.44, which was my good start of the week. So let's get into Adam and Bagum. Who's your first Adam and Bagum this week? Or who's your only Adam and Bagum this week?
I only have one. Orleans Darkwa for the Giants. He came out of nowhere. Obviously, on FanDuel, I was upset about it because he just came and stole the show from Jennings or anybody that the running backs of the Giants have. But I have him as a back. I know he's going to be a hot name for people looking for running backs, etc. But let's face it, the Giants now have, I guess, a three-headed monster. Maybe he comes out of nowhere, to get something like this. But there's still going to be Jennings there, and there's also still Andre Williams there. I just don't see room for the Giants to be using Orleans Darkwa all the time. I mean, I think it was more of okay, you never seen this guy before, so here you go. And they got shocked, obviously, at first, but after he had this great drive where he had, I think, 45 yards and a touchdown, he really disappeared the rest of the game. So bag him. I don't say he's anything hot or anything like that.
Yeah, my guy this week is Chris Conley, the wide receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs. Jeremy Maclin looks like he's going to come back this week. He had a concussion last week, so he was out. Conley had a decent game, actually, even with a touchdown last week. But I don't see him as doing anything in the future for Kansas City. Not just as of yet, especially with Albert Wilson there and Maclin, like I said, coming back. So bag him. You don't need him right now at this point, unless you're so desperate for a wide receiver that you need somebody to plug in. I doubt you're going to put a rookie wide receiver from Kansas City, who they don't really throw to wide receivers very often for touchdowns. So let's get into the waiver wire portion of the show. Who's your 3 waiver wire picks?
Obviously, Alfred Blue is going to be one. Yeah, obviously, Foster's out for the year, and he's the guy that is supposed to get more of the carries. I don't really like him, though, as somebody to keep. Nate Washington was a hot name this past week because of what he did. And Mike Tolbert, he's also got 2 touchdowns. And it looks like I'll talk about Tolbert. It looks like he's Carolina's go-to goal line guy if it's not Cam Newton himself. So people that have Jonathan Stewart, I feel bad for you because it really looks like he's going to be the short yardage and the goal line guy. He's going to be what Mike Allstott used to be back in the day with Tampa Bay. And Tolbert sometimes can break free on a couple of those third down runs, and he will have sometimes good stat lines where he can have 2 touchdowns and 50 yards rushing. And that's just somebody that, fantasy-wise, would be good on your team if you have to plug somebody in, get the guy that at least gets a lot of goal line looks.
Yeah, my 3 waiver wire pickups, obviously now Darren McFadden, who with Joseph Randle being hurt, McFadden's probably going to get the majority of the carries, along with a little bit of split carries with Christine Michael, who we were tricked into thinking was going to be the starter.
Yeah.
And he barely even plays. And it's almost like Dallas put that out there to make teams prepare for maybe Christine Michael, when really they were going to unleash Darren McFadden and Joseph Randle. And it was just unreal. So now we kind of know it's pretty much Darren McFadden show right now with Joseph Randle being hurt. Yeah. So we'll see him against Seattle. And Stevie Johnson is my other one, along with Alfred Blue. And like I just said, with McFadden against Seattle, it's a good waiver wire pickup for the future. But against Seattle this week, he's probably going to have a rougher time. But of all the backs to put against Seattle, McFadden's probably the best suited to play against Seattle with his, he's more of a bigger guy. He's more of a guy that can pound it in the middle with them at least. And that offensive line can open up holes. And he's a guy, if he can find the hole, can actually do something. But I just don't think it's going to happen. Even though you'd like to think it will, I don't think they can pound it with him. And I think Seattle's going to actually dominate Dallas this week.
What about the revenge game factor? We always see the guys coming back to play their old team. Christine Michael, you think he now would be the one?
That would be the one. That would be the one to maybe sneak in, but he hasn't shown anything.
No, I know.
Yet. So, I mean, it could be a sleeper. It could be a very, very, very deep sleeper. But that would be nice because I would love to see Seattle lose like that to their own guy. But I just think Darren McFadden's going to get the majority of the carries.
Have you noticed, though, honestly, this season, every revenge game has gone to somebody that you wouldn't expect. Andre Johnson did nothing. He plays Houston, phenomenal. What's his name? Harris for the Giants comes back and does that 100-yard return against the Cowboys. With your guys in San Francisco, Bolden
Torrey
and Smith tear it up against the Ravens. It just happens all the time, it seems. I'm kind of shocked by it. And I always put on my FanDuel, hey, this revenge games are true. Even if you think they're bad, they're going to have a good game, and sure enough, they do.
Yeah, there's only been one this year that hasn't bolded well. I forgot which one it was. I believe way earlier in the year, only one revenge game didn't go well for the guy wanted for the Red. And I can't remember which the player. Maybe you fans out there for fantasy football can let us know. I know there was one earlier this year that was like a big hyped game and the guy didn't do anything against his former team. But I don't know. We'll see. But let's get into the stardom portion. Who's your 3 starts at quarterback?
Ryan Fitzpatrick, Phillip Rivers, and Cam Newton. And I'll go ahead and talk about Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick has been throwing the ball pretty good, and against an Oakland team, which you just saw Phillip Rivers light up, their pass defense just isn't that good. And I actually see this game as a high-scoring game because Oakland's going to be forced to be throwing also. And the Jets, while they have a great defense, at times, we saw with New England, can give up big plays because there's just sometimes where it's really Cromartie that just kind of, I don't know what he does sometimes. He just forgets what he's doing, and he lets big plays happen. And that can happen especially with a guy like Cooper. So I expect this to be a high-scoring game. And with that said, the Jets are better prepared than, Phillip Rivers as far as weapons go to, take advantage of their situation. So Fitzpatrick should have a huge game.
Yeah, my three quarterbacks are Ryan Fitzpatrick, Phillip Rivers as well, and Eli Manning. And I'll talk about Manning against the Saints. The Saints did well against Matt Ryan. They've done well against certain quarterback. They held Andrew Luck in check for the most part of that game, the first half especially. But then then you saw the true colors kind of come out when they made some adjustments. And I think Manning's going to have his way with that secondary. It seems like Delvin Breaux is the only guy worth that can cover a wide receiver on that Saints team, and even he got beat a little bit last week. Once the adjustments or correct adjustments were made. And the Giants, they run a lot of slants, they run a lot of patterns, and Eli Manning is not afraid to throw it over the middle. He's not afraid to throw it deep, and I think the Saints are going to have their hands full even at home. I think this game could actually be a shootout. So who's your running back starts of the week?
LeGarrette Blount, Chris Johnson, and Justin Forsett. Now, I had Dion Lewis at first, but I'll go and talk about Blount. Miami's defense, while it's been playing good lately, they are still suspect in the run game or run defense. And New England, you saw what happened with the Jets. They didn't get to run on the Jets at all, so then they were doing, dink and dunks and stuff like that. And like I said, they were going to pass to Gronkowski, who killed the Jets at the end. But the game plan of the Jets is what's going to happen with New England this time against Miami, which is control the clock, run it, take advantage of their weaknesses. And their weaknesses in Miami right now is that run defense. And at home, I see this as a struggle game when I say that it's going to be real close also. And I just think Blount, though, this time, he wasn't used at all much last week. It's just going to be used early and often, and especially late to close out the game.
Yeah, my running back starts are Chris Johnson, Justin Forsett, and Charcandrick West versus Detroit. I'll talk about Chris Johnson. I've said it all year long, and I'll keep saying it again. Cleveland can't stop the run. Chris Johnson had a great game this past week. He's going to have another great game. I mean, you saw Todd Gurley go off last week against Cleveland. It just seems like everybody who plays Cleveland goes off scoring touchdowns and just yards and just tons of yards. And Chris Johnson is going to be the next benefactor of this Cleveland Browns ferocious defense that is just horrible. I think I just made a word. I think I just combined atrocious and horrible and made ferocious defense out of that. That's how bad Cleveland's defense is. Who's your wide receiver starts?
Brandon Marshall, Keenan Allen, and Mike Evans. I'll go ahead and talk about Mike Evans. Evans is the only guy that we just talked about Vince Jackson being out. And obviously, you saw what happened whenever he went down. Evans was getting all the looks. And now you're playing Atlanta defense that gives up a lot. I don't know if you noticed, Atlanta, either they're up big and it makes forces the team to go ahead and play catch up, or they struggle, but then the defense is holding everybody in check, and then they give up a big play. And it happens. I've seen it a lot already. And Mike Evans, being the main guy now, is going to be getting at least 15 targets. I think he's going to be one of the better receivers in fantasy this week, period. And I just have a feeling that Atlanta's going to be in for a surprise game, because they've been doing pretty good. They haven't had a real test. Tennessee gave it to them a little bit, but Tampa Bay is going to be a team. At home it's a little bit different, but even if it's a blowout, like I said, they're going to be playing catch up, and Evans is going to be the guy.
I think that game's going to be like 50-something to nothing Atlanta at the half.
Nah, I don't know about that.
I'm kidding. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a crazy game, though.
Honestly, I thought the same thing with Washington. They're at Washington. Washington's defense has been playing good, and then here comes Tampa Bay. I'm like, oh, it's a lock for Washington to have 28-0 at halftime, and Tampa Bay was the one that was actually on the offense doing everything.
Yeah. My wide receivers are Kendall Wright, Dante Moncrief, and Golden Tate. I'll talk about Golden Tate. They're playing Kansas City. Kansas City's been giving a lot up through the air. They're going to be keying on Calvin Johnson like crazy. So I see Golden Tate as being the recipient of a lot of balls this week in Kansas City. He might actually finally have his breakout game of the year. Who's your tight end starts?
My tight end starts are Delaney Walker, Benjamin Watson, and Vernon Davis, actually. I'll go ahead and talk about Walker, though. Walker is one of the only options in Tennessee. Mettenberg. I always say Muttenberg. Mettenberg is Berg or whatever it is. If he is playing, or even if it's Mariota, I think he's going to be getting most of the looks. And Houston's defense is not good at all in stopping the pass. And since he's going to be the only option, that's the reason why I think he's going to have a pretty good game, pretty decent fantasy wise also. So, yeah, those are my tight ends.
All right, my tight ends are Travis Kelce, Jordan Cameron, and Austin Seferian-Jenkins. And I'll talk about Seferian-Jenkins, the reason why I think he's going to have a big game this week against Atlanta. Atlanta has been giving up a lot of points to tight ends. Not only that, but like you said earlier, Vincent Jackson went down. Now that Vincent Jackson went down, Winston's going to look for another tall target. That other tall target's going to be Jenkins. So look for him to have his good game this week as well against that Atlanta Falcons defense. Who's your defensive starts?
St. Louis, Seattle, and Tennessee. And I'm going to talk about St. Louis. Obviously, 49ers have been looking terrible, but St. Louis has been looking awesome at home. This is a Jekyll and Hyde defense. I said last week that that this defense at home plays super fast, and I just think it's going to force Kaepernick to throw a lot of turnovers again. And even if they don't decide to throw, and they try to run the ball with Hyde's foot and with Kaepernick running, I just see fumbles happening. St. Louis defense is just, in my opinion, the best defensive play this week.
I actually agree with you. I have them as well against the 49ers. I have the Packers and the Vikings, and I'll talk about the Packers, why I have them. Peyton Manning has struggled all year long. The Packers defense gets after the quarterback. Peyton Manning has no offensive line. Therefore, look for the Packers to get a few sacks, cause a few turnovers, and I think the Packers are going to win this game more than handily than people think. I know Denver's defense is tough against the pass and everything, but I think Aaron Rodgers will have his way, leaving the Packers more apt to blitz at Manning and to take control of that game. So let's get into the sit-em portion. Who's your 3 quarterback sits of the week?
The 3 quarterback sits of the week are Brian Hoyer, Derek Carr, and Teddy Bridgewater. Now I'm going to talk about Hoyer. Hoyer, he was a great little story when it first happened, but now with Foster down, now with no play action, game, no dump offs to Foster, Hoyer's going to have a struggle. And Tennessee, surprisingly, has one of the best pass defenses, and we saw what happened with Matt Ryan just this past week. He did find Julio Jones, but I think he was held at 60-something yards only. It was a struggle. That game was a struggle, and that's with Matt Ryan with all his weapons. So I can't imagine Houston doing any better. So Hoyer is my sit of the week on that one.
And my 3 sits are Derek Carr, Peyton Manning, like I just said, and Jay Cutler, and I'll talk about Carr. Carr had a good game last week against San Diego. This week, he won't have that same good game against the Jets. The Jets' defense was carved up by Brady, but that's Tom Brady. Derek Carr has not reached Tom Brady status yet, and not many guys can do that to a defense like the Jets, do that to certain defenses, and Tom Brady's just one of a kind. And Derek Carr has not reached that level yet. Derek Carr will struggle against the Jets this week with Darrelle Revis and Antonio Cromartie and that Jets defense that blitzes a lot. Who's your running back sits?
Latavius Murray, Doug Martin, and Eddie Lacy. Now, I'm going to talk about Murray. He's playing the Jets. I mean, the Jets' run defense is just, head and shoulders above almost anybody in the league. I think they're up there. I don't know. I think after this week, they're probably number 1 because they literally shut down New England's run. It was so bad that Tom Brady, for the first time in his career, led the team in rushing yards with only 15 yards. That's how crazy that was.
Yeah.
And another fantastic stat I saw about that game, which was hilarious. It said that he accounted alone, Tom Brady, for 356 of 357 total yards of that offense. That's incredible if you think about it. So 99.9% of the yards were Brady himself. That's crazy.
Like I said, one of a kind.
One of a kind, yeah. But anyways, with that said, Murray against the Jets, come on. Don't even think that that's going to happen because no running back has been able to solve the Jets this year, and I don't think he's going to be the guy.
And my 3 guys are Doug Martin, who's had a good couple weeks at Atlanta, Eddie Lacy at Denver, and Chris Ivory, your boy, at Oakland. Oakland's surprisingly good against the run. Now, but the only reason I'm putting Chris Ivory is because he runs hard. But the problem is he's a little banged up. He got a little banged up in that New England game, and you saw a lot of Zach Stacy. So from what I believe, he's still a little bit banged up from that game. And Oakland being the being a tough team they are against the run. I think they're going to supplement Ivory a lot with Zach Stacy a little bit more. So he's not probably worth your start this week when they're on top of playing a run defense. He's going to be splitting a lot more carries now with Zach Stacy. So who's your wide receiver?
I think also he's gimpy.
Yeah, he's gimpy.
My wide receiver sits are Dez Bryant, Amari Cooper, and Uncle Bull. Now I'm going to talk about Dez Bryant. I live here in the Fort Worth area, so, I follow up a lot on the Cowboys. He's practicing today, actually, is when they said he's supposed to practice. They said that his chances of playing are extremely well, but it is against Seattle. He is coming off of a foot injury. I think he'll be limited. I think he'll be more of a decoy. I don't think you should trust Dez Bryant to be Dez Bryant, especially now with Castle throwing at him either, as somebody that you can rely on fantasy-wise. So if you're hoping, you're reading everything, and you're thinking, okay, good, he's back, I would suggest sitting him. I don't think it's going to be a good week for him.
Yeah, and I got some big names, well, a couple big names at least, well, maybe three. James Jones, T.Y. Hilton, and Alshon Jeffrey versus Minnesota. I'll talk about T.Y. Hilton. Josh Norman has become a crazy shutdown corner for the Carolina Panthers, and that guy is going to be all over T.Y. Hilton this week. Everybody knows the Indianapolis Colts run on T.Y. Hilton. I mean, they have other weapons too, but Josh Norman will be shadowing T.Y. Hilton, and pretty much they don't throw his way. They've learned to pretty much not throw his way. He's become, I don't know what's going on with him, but he has literally become a shutdown corner this year. He's been shutting everybody down. So I do not like T.Y. Hilton.
He's the new Revis.
Yeah, he's the new Revis right now. I do not like T.Y. Hilton this week. I like Dante Moncrief this week. I do not like T.Y. Hilton this week. Who's your tight end sits?
Kyle Rudolph, Gary Barnidge, and Jordan Cameron. I'll go and talk about Barnidge. He's been pretty much the only positive thing for the Browns lately. Now, McCown, though, got hurt that game. And if he's hurt, he was really the safety blanket for him, not Manziel. Now, if they both play, Arizona's defense is pretty good by itself, and they usually shut down the tight ends anyway. So he's going to have a bad game no matter who the quarterback is. If it's McCown, it's slightly better, but I don't think he's going to be a factor this game.
Yep, I have Greg Olsen, Delaney Walker, and Eric Ebron, and I'll talk about Greg Olsen. Indianapolis has been pretty tough on tight ends this year. Despite their defensive woes, it's been pretty much, against running backs and wide receivers, but not against tight ends, and I think Greg Olsen's going to struggle this week against Indianapolis. So who's your defensive sits?
Miami, Pittsburgh, and Denver. And I'm going to talk about Miami. They're playing New England. New England, you saw what they did to the Jets defense. Miami's been playing great after coming off the bye and after the new coach and all. But let's face it, the Patriots are head and shoulders the best team in the NFL right now, in my opinion. And I think they're going to decimate Miami's, reborn or, rejuvenated defense. I think it's a no-brainer that you got to sit it.
Yep, my defensive sits are the Dolphins, the Giants, and the Bengals. And I'm talking about the Bengals. Ben Roethlisberger's back. Bengals defense has been playing well. They've been playing tough, but I don't think against Ben Roethlisberger they're going to be able to stop him. I think it's going to be a shootout, and that's just how it's going to go this week. All right, that does it for this. That does it for the sits. Let's get into the sleepers. Who's your three sleepers of the week?
Marvin Jones, Tavon Austin, and Mike Tolbert. Now I'm going to talk about Marvin Jones. I just think, with that defense they're playing, it's just a perfect opportunity for him to be doing good. So it's funny because you told me earlier before the show that we have the same names here, and I wanted to pick these guys actually to be some of the starts, but got to have some sleepers in there, and that's a perfect one right there.
Yeah, my three sleepers, Nick Foles, Tavon Austin, and Marvin Jones. And I'll talk about Nick Foles. The 49ers have been making quarterbacks look like all-stars just like the Ravens have all year long, pretty much, with the exception of like Teddy Bridgewater in that first game. But and Aaron Rodgers even in one of their games they played. But still, Nick Foles at home against the 49ers is going to do well. I think the 49ers are going to be keen on Todd Gurley, but they have been giving him a lot of points through the air. So look for Nick Foles to get like 3 touchdowns this week. All right, that does it for the stardom sit 'em.
3 touchdowns, huh?
Yeah, 3 touchdowns pass. That's what I think. But that does it for the stardom sit 'em show for week 8. Leave comments in the comment section. Don't forget to ask us your questions. The live show, I think, will be Friday this week, not Saturday. I'm going out of town on Saturday, so it probably most likely be Friday. So look for that on YouTube. I always post it at least a few hours or a day early. Look for that. So we'll be live on Friday. I don't know if Siggy's going to join me. We'll figure that out if that happens, or he can just join later. We'll figure that out. But anyways, thanks for watching. Best of luck to you in Week 8. And that's it. Look for the FanDuels. If you like your FanDuel stuff, Siggy always posts FanDuel, his weekly FanDuel projections on the website. So go to magnasportsnetwork.com for that. And as for you guys that offer or that have emailed me about writing, 2 of you guys have offered to write for us. So if you see that, make sure you get back to me, and I will check the email as soon as I can and get back to you, and then we'll figure out how to get you on the website and get you off and running. All right, so that's it. See you next week. Peace out, guys.